From in the beginning to the musical apocalypse, this is The Bible Says What? I'm your host, Mike Weisman. After all the years I've spent in the church as a believer, I was never satisfied with the religion I was indoctrinated into. Jesus left me empty inside. The demigod that was supposed to be my everything left a lot of holes. He was never there to encourage me during my struggles. He wasn't there listening and helping me get through tough times. Christianity was and is not good enough for me. I need more than an invisible friend who sends me goosebumps. My desire for human interaction and need for evidence and proof left me doubting and wanting. Throwing on some Jesus blinders and pretending there's an invisible man sending me feelings did not cut it for me. Furthermore, my investigations into the book I had been raised to believe in only brought more doubt and eventual freedom from the religious indoctrination that held me prisoner in my own mind. The bubble most Christians live in is small and unnecessary. They trap themselves into a belief system that is impossible to defend logically. They believe there are invisible beings, wars, bad guys, and curses. The only thing Christians have that exists in the real world is their holy book, and that thing is loaded with absurdities and impossibilities. Let's start the show.
Is there anything in the Bible that you yourself have an issue with?
A divine blast.
Actually enjoyed arguing with you and stuff.
God doesn't kill children.
What do you think the Passover was? Are you reading a different Bible?
No.
You worship him because of the things he's done. Why can I not judge him because of the things he's done?
Obey me or I'll kill your kids. It doesn't seem very
well, that's brutal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh man, what a tough life.
Today's special guest is returning guest, Garrett Vandenberg. Welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back, man. I'm happy to be chatting here again.
Absolutely. It's great having you back. Good seeing you. Hope everything's been all right. Today, we just kind of want to start off with, let's describe the deity that Garrett believes in.
The deity that I believe in. Well, I mean, so we use the word God to talk about something. But I think the problem a lot of people get kind of when I think the problems a lot of people kind of get into when there's kind of the atheist Christian dialogue about this is that usually, like, I mean, I look at the conversation that Sam Harris, or I mean, I just look at any of those guys in kind of there's like a great four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? There was Dawkins, Hitchens, Harris, and Lawrence Krauss. I think those are the four guys. It's always the case that the God that they're arguing doesn't exist. Like I usually agree with these guys when they disprove the existence of a particular God, but that's because they're quantifying a particular thing. They're saying, well, you know, if these are the features of God exactly, then that's not real.
Yeah.
But there's something. I mean, this is a problem. This is a really philosophical problem, though, because as soon as I describe the very specific features of you or me, you can push that description to a limit, and then you can say, that person you're talking about, they don't really exist because you see, you just described them wrong. That there's a logical contradiction in the thing you just described.
Interesting.
And so that seems to be a problem with I mean, on just the surface level, talking about people that we both, you know, we kind of take for granted that people exist and that you and I both exist. And so it's difficult when you're talking about God because the fundamental characteristics, especially of the Christian God, are that he can't be described or that you can't even say his name.
Yahweh.
So, I mean,
I said it. I win.
Well, I mean, maybe. I mean, who knows? Maybe that's not even the way you say it. Because I mean,
That's
right?
true.
That was the whole gimmick with like only spelling his name in Hebrew. It's just, well, okay. I think this is even pretty cool. I think because in general, there's a whole bunch of just in Hebrew, like, well, there's no vowels in Hebrew, right?
Right.
So there's this whole different linguistic approach to, and there's philosophy embedded in the way this language and the way this written language is developed, because I think there's, I forget who I heard talking about this, but I think there's this idea that any word, if you put too much effort to kind of shape the vowels in it, you're taking too much of the implicit meaning out of it and trying to make too much explicit. Right? You're trying to over define the meaning of the word, whereas if you just kind of put the letters that indicate the kind of the hard turns, you give people a little bit more room for maybe for expression. I might just be I'm just kind of riffing off of some fragment I heard somebody talking about Hebrew, but I mean, but this is the case though with Hebrews, that they don't have vowels, right?
Yeah. So
like we don't know how to say whatever that word is that they're referring to. You know, whenever you see all caps Lord in the English Bible, that's usually the way it's translated, right? Yeah, I think that's right. Anyways,
well, yeah, there's
all
a few
caps
spots.
Lord is Yahweh.
Yeah, I mean, God, Yahweh, he calls himself lots of different things. But in the end, what you believe in this guy, this not necessarily a guy, but this person, this thing, this entity, just a basic description of, I mean, because to me, I've yet to see him. You know, obviously, he hasn't shown up. He still doesn't call. Ridiculous. But
you have, I mean, you have a relationship with the things about your life that you can't control, though, right?
Relationship with the things in my life I can't control, like my kids.
That's
for sure. I can't control them.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, that would.
But
we
have a relationship. Yeah.
I guess I'm talking about, like, so categorically, maybe you could talk about sort of the unknown, or like, so there's what you know, there's the things around you, and then things that you can sort of make sense of, and you can predict their behavior, and you can build behavior
to an extent, I guess,
around them, right? That's one categorical. That's just one category in the way that we process the world. We have the things that we think that we sort of know, and obviously, yeah, there's a limit to that. We can't perfectly predict anything, even in the known category. Always known enough that we feel sort of comfortable in it. Right?
Yeah, but you still expect the unexpected, just like kids. I know what they're going to do most of the time, but they're kids, man. They could just randomly take off their pants and run around the living room. That's right, just the unpredictability of it all,
they would kind of almost more occupy the category of like the unknown.
But I can still describe them. You know, I could describe their attributes.
They're kind of grappling somewhere in between there, right? But what I'm saying, when I'm talking about the unknown, like there's the things that you feel like you know and that you can predict. There's the things that you sort of are aware of but don't feel as confident about your level to predict their behavior. And then there's the things beyond that, which is I don't even know what this is. I don't even know what's beyond it. I can't even conceive of it. Is it a thing? Is it a place? Is it like, I mean, even just thinking about the limits of the universe, it's like we don't know what's beyond sort of the edge of the universe.
Right. So I don't assert that I know or have a relationship with it. I know there's unknowns. You know, I'm not going to know all that, but to assert that you have a relationship with this unknown is a whole nother category, right?
Well, no, I mean, you have a relationship with it. If you can say it, then you have a relationship with it. That means that you've put it in a category as to how you are going to relate to it. Right? Like a label, that's part of what a label is. It's saying within this category that there's some sort of overriding sort of meaning to everything in this category. So it relates to me in a consistent way. Right? Like the reason I call this a cup is because there's a certain agreement within all of the, I guess, ceramic here that it relates to me in that it is a cup, that I can use it as a cup, or that it just is a cup.
Yeah. And it's a tangible item though. Like God is not very tangible. How do you describe him? I mean, is he
I know I'm kind of dancing around the question.
That's okay. You're fine. It makes for good conversation.
I want to kind of build some groundwork structure here to try to talk about this with you, because it's difficult to talk about. But I mean, so now you're kind of pushing at like that there's abstract things. I mean, so you said, how do you believe in the existence of something that is abstract? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Kind of. Well, yeah, but essentially just to describe him. I mean, you believe in this thing, this entity out there. Let's say I believe that alpacas exist. Well, I could describe one for you. It's hairy.
But you also believe that love exists. You believe that wisdom exists.
I can describe love in many different forms and fashions. I can describe
Right,
the love
do
of
you
an
feel like
animal
you could
has
fully
for its
describe
human. What's that?
Do you feel like you could sort of exhaustively describe it or like fully describe it? Or do you
Give me
feel
enough
like it is-
time. I mean, I could exhaust the topic of love. I'm sure. Well, enough research and enough time, I could definitely do that. How does that work
So
for you?
that's a fundamentally different intuition about reality than that I have, because I don't think that you could actually totally describe love.
Love
I
isn't a
think it is
being, though.
an
Love isn't.
absolutely-
It's not an entity. You know, it's a feeling. It's a thing you can use to describe some stuff. But it's not an actual entity. It's not an actual being.
Okay, so you want to talk about maybe the consciousness of God? Is that kind of what you're pointing at?
What is it? What is God?
I mean, in some contexts, as far as just like philosophically, God is a category or a word, which is
Okay.
really important for making sense of the universe. Like if you don't have that category, you can't kind of begin to do philosophy. As far as like, very personally and intuitively, it's like God is sort of a character in my life.
Okay,
God
he's a
would be
character.
being,
He's a
right?
being. Okay,
but
that's a good start. I like that. He's a character.
he's a character. He's a real character.
That's for sure.
What I mean is that I have to, in order to relate to God on a personal level, I have to
Mhm.
sort of anthropomorphize God. So
Absolutely,
I think
yeah.
of God more as a person.
Okay.
But I think even within the Christian tradition of theology, it's like I think we kind of are pretty straightforward that that's sort of a it's not a mistake, but it's like it's a use. It's something that we have. It's like a useful tool that we have to use in order to relate to this really, really abstract thing. That's like, so like I don't know how deeply that's like maybe you could say it's a metaphor. I don't know if it's a metaphor. I don't know how deeply you can say it's a metaphor or not a metaphor, because it's such a mysterious thing. But it just seems that it's deeply necessary for understanding life to at least begin to talk about God. Like you can't have a conversation about almost anything without having room for that unknown. Or I mean, just if you have an intuition that there's sort of an order to everything. I mean, this is one of the oldest sort of Christian arguments in the book. Maybe you even have some thoughts on the idea. Like, what do you think of the argument for God existing based on order, there being an order to the universe?
Well, I think it's just filling in the gaps. It's what I've seen a lot of Christians do is fill in that gap of knowledge with God, with this entity, with this somebody who's too abstract to describe. Apparently, I mean, he just fills those gaps of our knowledge, and I don't think we should do that. I think we should stop at the I don't know and then try and figure it out from there, not just assert or insert, this invisible entity of some sort, character.
Well, so I think that's important too. I just think that if you, and it seems almost that you're pointing to people using the God of the gaps kind of thing
Absolutely.
as an excuse to not investigate things and to sort of
No.
like discard the scientific method,
Sometimes,
or like to be lazy.
Sometimes that'll happen. I'm sure that happens, but for the most part, a lot of times it's just, they've got the answer already. Like I said, some of them do that. They put it aside. They've got the answer. They know it's Jesus without even looking into it. And
it was, see, what I find meaningful about relating to Jesus and relating to God and this whole Christian tradition is that it says there's an answer, but that the answer is a never-ending question. Like it's not an answer that's supposed to be dismissive. It's an answer that says, okay, there is a God, or there is ultimately an order to everything. There is something that sort of holds everything together in a more or less continuous fashion. And
gravity.
You're supposed to, well,
I win.
It depends about what you mean by gravity, because you're talking about Newtonian gravity, or you're talking about Einstein, like quantum relativity gravity, or because any one of those statements is wrong about the universe. We can't actually understand what it is that's holding together the universe exactly. We can build a model that approximates what it is that's holding things together. Like we can approximate gravity, but we can't actually properly, like this is just
it's a testable
problem with models though too.
But it's testable though. Gravity is testable. We can test the theory of gravity. We land on Mars using gravity as a calculation for how fast or whatever you got to go into there. So we can actually test gravity. Gravity is a testable thing. Yahweh is not testable. We can't, I mean, how do you test that?
That's an interesting. I mean, I think part of the problem there might be that you would be treating, like, how do you test a person? Test to see if they're conscious. I mean, we got to develop like a Turing test to see if like
talk to them for one.
AI is really. Yeah, but we can talk to AIs too, and we don't know whether or not they've achieved consciousness.
But they can talk back.
Because we don't actually know what consciousness is.
Well, that's beside the point.
I mean, that's fundamental to the point, because that's about the assertion that God has consciousness, or that the category of the unknown unknowns, or the category of the everything that's holding reality together is conscious. That's part of our question here, is there some consciousness that's like bigger than everything?
I mean, besides the point,
how do we test that? We don't really know how to do that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so I mean, partially, yes, it's just an intuition.
Yeah.
So we're not fundamentally using logic here to. I mean, some people are like deeply trying to use the tools of logic to try to prove the existence of God. I'm not really claiming that. I don't think, like, I feel like, I mean, it's partially a feeling. It's partially like I deeply feel that God exists. But I mean, that's
not logical.
Feelings and intuitions
we can agree,
are at the bottom of every logical system, though.
Yeah, but I mean, you got a feeling that gravity is real and you're able to test it. You have a feeling that Yahweh is real, but you're unable to test it.
Well, but this is the thing with any mathematical logical system, is that you build rules, or you start with definitions, and then you can build theorems or rules based on those definitions. Right?
Yes, exactly.
But any system that this is okay. I think I even brought this up last time, but it's just come up a couple times because I think it's interesting, and it's helped. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's a little crutch. I don't know. But I recently had a friend introduce me to the concept of Gödel's incompleteness theorems, which is this mathematician, Kurt Gödel. He discovered that basically any mathematical system that attempts to model reality either can be incomplete and consistent, or consistent and incomplete, which is basically just that you're not able to logic. You're not able. I mean, the simpler version of that is just to say that you can't build a model that properly reflects reality, because as soon as you kind of define the rule too specifically, you define sort of a closed system to model reality. You lose some of the details of actual reality, which is not a closed system. It's the entire thing. Mm-hmm. So no matter how you try to, I mean, this is what I'm saying, is that any of our definitions for like gravity or any of these things that you see, we can test the definitions. If you describe them very specifically, there actually is a breaking point to every single one of those definitions, because there's quantum uncertainty at the bottom of all math and all physics.
Yeah, but there's levels of certainty that we can have for certain things, of course. Yeah,
right. Okay, levels of certainty. That's a good touchstone, I think, for us then, because I think levels of certainty is a really, really important tool. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, you're good. You're good. No, and so how do we have that level of certainty that Yahweh's behind any of it?
Partly, I mean, there is literature that supports that cognitively people are healthier and better off and find more meaning in their lives when they participate in a religious community.
Yeah, well, that goes both ways, though. I feel that the harm religion does outweighs any kind of good that it does. Yeah, you're gonna have a watermelon that's delicious and whatnot, but if it's all full of mold, you're gonna throw the watermelon away. You're not gonna keep that thing. It's got ants all over it. I'm not gonna eat that. No way, man. Get rid of that idea.
Anyway, judging from, I mean, I can't argue with that, because you're talking about your own experience, and like, if religion for you has been a net negative, then yeah,
it's historical, man.
Well, I mean, historically, no. I mean, historically, any successful nation has always been religious. There's never been an atheistic society that got very far.
Japan doing great. They're doing a lot better than us over here. That's for sure.
There's still mystical religions in Japan.
Of course, there's still issues, and they have religions, but it's mainly an atheistic
mystical traditions.
Yeah, but still an atheist country, mainly an atheist country, and they are surviving. Well, I mean, Sweden or Switzerland or one of those as well. Same thing. I mean, there's a lot of them.
That Eastern thought is atheistic, but it's just because they're just kind of grasping more onto this concept that I'm even pointing to, that like they don't want to describe the unknown too specifically, so they don't want to call it God.
Well,
but they still have a religious tradition.
Taoism, you got all this stuff they got over there. But they definitely have the religious beliefs for sure. But but to say that the atheistic nation hasn't been successful, that's not accurate.
I mean, the ones that we just pointed to are not examples. I mean, I don't know if I can tap too deep into this problem because I don't know probably the history of enough nations to really mess around with it. But as far as I know, I mean, like historically, all of the big ones like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and then like later on Greek, Rome. Those are like the most ancient ones. Those first ones that sort of managed to get off the ground. They're all deeply religious. There's a really, really rich mythology surrounding all those peoples. And that's what I was saying. Like now, as far as the cognitive science seems to point to, that people are, and I know you said you feel that like there's a net negative result of Christianity.
Absolutely, the Crusades, the Salem witch trials, the right now we've got the gay bashing that's going on. You're not allowed to get married. You can't love who you want to love because I think it's gross. Blah blah blah. You know, there's religion is slavery. There's so many detrimental things it brings. We don't need all that stuff. It's the watermelon. Let's just have a nice sweet watermelon with all of the shit on it. Let's just get the shit off the watermelon and eat the watermelon. We don't need the religion part. We don't need the guy who says slavery is, I think we've been here 100 times, me and you, but we don't need all of that extra, the shit that the horrible
I
things
agree
in there. Yeah. I mean, religion brings a lot of that with it. So if you just brush off the religion part, keep the humanity part, let's all have some sweet watermelon and live in peace.
But so let's keep the humanity part. So what are the values that you want to keep then? So like that humanity, so like humanitarianism, just in general, that like humans are intrinsically valuable.
Absolutely. All life.
Okay.
I'm going to go
that's
further.
Not logical.
I'm going to say all earthlings, all animals. I think we all deserve the best life we can possibly have, to be happy and not suffer and not be ridiculed for what you believe or what you don't believe or who you love.
I think I agreed with you up until the ridicule point.
Well, it's in the Bible.
I mean, that you and I are ridiculing each other right now, sort of willfully. It's like you can build an environment where you can do that good faith, and that like I think I would be cheering for a world where we can have negative discussion in a good faith way as much as possible. Where I mean, obviously there's sometimes where you have to sort of say negative things to people in an intense way that isn't especially pleasant. Like let's say, somebody's, I feel like this is dumb. People use this one all the time, but like somebody's standing in front of a train, you yell at them, right?
Yeah.
Or
watch out.
Like there are times where you need to have sort of like, but we want to sort of minimize those times. We want to like, as we want to use as minimum necessary force. I think that's a great principle.
Do less harm.
Right.
Yeah.
But minimum
Humanism.
Necessary force.
Minimum necessary. The most minimum. But when it comes to religion, we're slaughtering people. But the Bible itself tells you to kill several different people, including infidels, including people like me, people that won't seek Yahweh. What is it? 2 Chronicles 15:12. I found this the other day. They entered into a covenant to seek the Lord. Oops, sorry. Cut off my own thing here. The Lord, the God of their ancestors with all their heart and souls. All who do not seek the Lord, the God of Israel, were to be put to death, whether small or great, man or woman. And it says in several places to kill those who, don't worship Yahweh. So I don't think we need that. The religion part of it,
see, Christianity in general has also reached that conclusion that we don't think we need that. No, you don't see Christians still. Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's evolved. That seems to be evidence that there's something about this tradition that's allowed it to evolve to the point where it can move past stuff like that.
It's evolved and it still has those horrible things in there. It hasn't really moved past it. And there's still a lot of people that believe these horrible things, like such as to kill the gays. I talked to a guy the other day that thinks if we catch them in the act, they should be stoned to death. That's horrible. Okay. That's so bad. I had such a problem with that conversation. But I mean,
jeez.
And that's based on the Bible. The Bible is telling these people those things. That's what it says, to stone gay men. It says it in there twice. Jesus mentions something about, I can't remember exactly, but it says it in the Bible.
To stone people.
Jesus said, "Why aren't you stoning children?" to the Pharisees when they weren't following the laws of Yahweh. And he says, not at least one pen or jottle will be taken away until all is completed, and heaven and earth have disappeared, and heaven and earth still haven't disappeared. So, these laws are still relevant. These laws that tell you to stone kids, stone witches, stone gay people. All these laws are still in there.
What Jesus seems to be talking about there, and obviously he talks in a really mystical way. People can talk forever about what they think Jesus is getting at. But what I think Jesus is getting at in his, I don't think that's unfortunate at all. I think that's a really deeply important part of building a lasting tradition. If you want to have a dialectic that lasts, you can't let people feel like they've come to a conclusion that they've figured it out. If you dialectics is really important.
The guy that wants to stone gay people has it figured out. It's in the Bible. Right. This is what it says.
So he's not, as far as my understanding of Christ's message, he's not acting in as Christian of a way as he could be. Right. He might still in certain ways feel that he has a relationship with Christ. And I don't know the guy. I'm not having this conversation with him right now. I mean, C.S. Lewis argues that the people that are most aware of their are probably, he bases kind of a pretty general statement that like, you're going to find a lot more losers and obviously bad people turning to religion, because they're going to be the people that are more aware of how shitty they are as people, right? You're not going to start kind of looking for help on a personal level unless you are confronted with the fact, like, some serious personal problems. So, I mean, that's kind of one argument. But I mean, I don't know where that guy's at. Jumping back to Jesus, though, and talking about as far as, saying that the law won't be removed and not one
jot and tittle.
Jot or tittle.
Whatever it is.
One tit or jottle. I don't know what he says.
Way to make it weird.
About tits and jottles. Don't remove any tits.
Don't do that. We like those. We're very
okay. Getting sidetracked there. Basically, nothing's going to be removed from the law, which, to my understanding, I mean, there's a bit more that goes to that message. That basically, he talks about murder. He talks about sexual immorality. He talks about, various types of sins. And he basically says, I mean, to the extent that you guys recognize these as sins, sure, but we're going to do a yes and here and say all of that is true, but actually the standard for how good we should be to each other is way above that.
Interesting. Oh, you froze there.
Like,
okay, there you go.
Sorry, I didn't actually. I stopped for a second. Sorry, I don't know if I also froze.
I apologize. You're good. Go ahead.
But I mean, he says basically, okay, you shouldn't murder, and he doesn't actually double down on any of the responses for how you should treat people if they've done a sin. But he basically just takes all the sins and says, you guys have recognized these sins, but actually the standard for how good you should be is even higher. If you even look at somebody really hatefully in your heart, then sort of the seed of sin the seed of murder has begun to grow in your heart, and you've actually already entered into relationship with that sin, already entered into relationship with murder. So you've murdered them in your heart already. If you recognize that, we should be faithful to each other in our marriages. If you start kind of thinking about sexually engaging with somebody outside of your marriage, you just start thinking about it. You just start engaging with those thoughts. You've already allowed that seed of sin to start into your heart. So it's like, sure, I mean, sexual immorality is bad, but thought crime, right?
You can be convicted of thought crime. That's quite a thing.
It's that, like, because why do you feel guilty for things that you thought, right? You have an intuition about the fact that you sort of shouldn't engage certain types of thoughts.
I guess, but that's not really that goes back to my humanism part of it. If I'm having a thought about, let's just say, hurting somebody, well, that goes back to my humanism, do no harm. Well, of course, that goes to my empathy. That has nothing to do with Jesus or God.
So do no harm that's actually one of the fundamental tenets of humanism. No harm.
That's just my thing. I don't know what humanism says or doesn't say. I'm just going to say I'm
okay. I didn't know if it was because I mean,
I know less harm.
Yuval Harari in *Sapiens* kind of points to humanism as a religion, anyways.
Which is weird because there's no God and there's no book of things to follow.
There is sort of, if you abstract the idea of a God to at least have something to do with an intuition about morality and the way you should live your life, and a narrative where you should be heading and where you should be going away from, right? I mean, that's God can be conceived of as a story, as a person, as a category, as a word, as a as a way. Christ says that he is the way to the Father, and he is the way, the truth, and life. There's no way to enter into relationship with God other than through him. So I don't know
weird.
exactly what that is. That's very mystical talking as well, right? But it's like there's a whole bunch of ways of thinking about, well, what is God? It's like I can't answer. I can't answer any of those questions specifically. I can give general answers, but that's all that Christianity does. Is it within the canon of Christianity? Is it gives very vague. They kind of try to push you in a certain direction and say, this is something even about. I learned recently about Buddhism, is that you can't actually engage with Buddha. I think this is really important, and I wish Western Christendom could sort of learn a little bit of this, and I think maybe Eastern Christianity has done this a little bit better. But in the West, anyways, we tend to think about things through logical systems, and we kind of start with our definitions, and then we build our theorems and build our logical arguments. Within Buddhism, if you even start to do that, they say you don't get it. Like the point of like. And this, I'm kind of new to this. I'm just doing some reading and just talking to some different people who are more engaged in this sector. But I think the idea is that in order for you to experience enlightenment, you have to experience the process of walking towards enlightenment. And it's not like, okay, if you check this box, and this box, you've got enlightenment, because enlightenment isn't something that you super clearly define. It's like you can help push people more towards it or more away from it. And you can orient them towards enlightenment or away from enlightenment. But if you try to say, here's a specific definition of enlightenment, then you've got it wrong. You don't understand what enlightenment is.
Well,
and
enlightenment
I just kind of want to
different
apply a little bit
to each person.
Yeah, exactly. Your experience of enlightenment is going to be different. But it's like there's still this abstract category that you talk about within Buddhism that, like, okay, this is at least where we're trying to head here.
Well, it's like
right?
the woke phrase. I'm a woke human being because I see this and this and this. Well, it can be strewed as many different kinds of things. I'm woke because Jesus. I see that Jesus is there. The same thing with that. It can be taken in a lot of different ways, and your enlightenment might be different than my enlightenment. So two enlightenments are the same.
Yeah, although I think there are. Well, I think you're pointing to a real problem there. I think that's part of why within both Buddhism and Christianity, there's a sense of like, okay, well, we sort of canonize these people as certainly having reached enlightenment or certainly being saints, right? Where it's like, okay, we really almost can't be sure about anybody, but we can kind of combine our certainties to have a relatively higher level of certainty where it's like we're all convinced of this. We all deeply feel that this is true, and we even deeply think that this is true, right? We're combining our thinking and our feeling and our logic and our community, our distributed cognition to try to come to a conclusion here, and we feel that this is something we could be pretty sure about. And so that's even partial. That's the way the Bible was put together, right? There was a lot of like sort of voting and people sort of asking themselves, kind of doing some self-reflection and having a community conversation. And they say, okay, we all just really feel like these are the books that we're supposed to prioritize above the other ones.
Yeah, and they still let a lot of that stuff in there, which surprises me. I don't know why they would.
Which is surprising. It's like, why would they leave that in there, especially if they obviously weren't living, in accordance to a sort of negative reading of those texts. They had some sort of deep confidence that there was something here that was important, even if they, I don't know. I don't know if they felt like they could describe it that well, or they just said, I don't know, there's something here that seems to be deeply important.
There's a bunch of other religions. Let's get ours out there. Quick, fix this book, put it together. Let's get it out, publish it before they get theirs out to everybody else. There's lots of different theories, but you, you said specifically pushing you in a direction, like the Bible is pushing you in a direction, religion is pushing you in a direction. Jesus, which one is specifically pushing you in a direction, and in what direction?
Yeah, this is part of the way I would think about worship is yet pointing in a certain direction, and it's like we have sort of abstractions for talking about direction. We can talk about north, south, east, west. Those are physical directions, but none of them again actually exist. You can't actually get to north or get to south. Or
you mean North Pole isn't real? I can't visit Santa? God damn it. Garrett, ruin all my fun.
You could abstract a certain area and call it exactly precisely north, but I don't know
Yeah.
how
We give it that meaning.
Do you want to give it to us? Like, how precise do you want to be, down to a plank length of this is exactly where north is?
We could probably measure it eventually. I'm sure there's a poll somewhere. Somebody threw on there. That's got to be it.
So I mean,
there it is.
So you want to talk about the direction that Christianity is pushing me toward? I mean, I could try to describe it, but
do you feel that Yahweh is pushing you in a direction, or the Bible is pushing you in a direction?
Oh yeah. But I mean, I feel that everything, every person, every being, every thought, every story that I interact with potentially, well, I mean, they all do push in directions. And I mean, the only way to see the sort of the net result of where I'm being pushed is just to watch my life. You'd have to just get to know me. I can try to generally describe it. I can say that I feel like I'm being pushed in the direction towards trying to be a more humble person, to be a more loving person, and to care about my community more, and to, in everything that I look at in the world, try to think about it in such a way that it relates to the bigger picture on as many levels as I can conceive, and beyond my own conception. I try to look at that tree and see, okay, how can I think about this tree in such a way that values the tree to every level of fiber of its being, and its surroundings, and earth and the universe, right? It's like, that's what Christianity points me towards. It points me towards a deeply towards this sort of cosmic harmony of everything out there and everything inside. Yeah, harmony. Yeah.
Man, have you read this book?
Yeah, I mean,
Jesus comes to bring a division and a sword, and not peace, and then I'm going to go back to the gay part here, where it says the gay people will not inherit the kingdom of earth, or Yahweh. I mean, how is that bringing things together? How is that making a harmony at all? That's separating, that's dividing, that's conquering and judging. I mean, that's not harmony.
I mean, we can maybe clearly talk about what we think we could try to describe harmony.
Kumbaya.
I mean, the things you're pointing to, I think I agree. Those are not harmonious moments.
Yeah.
But I'm still saying the net result of having contemplated with those stories and participated in the community of different Christian communities I've had access to. I mean, I'm not going to argue that there aren't many deep problems in Christianity, especially. I mean, I have more of an insight into the problems located in my tradition than anybody else, because I lived them. And I mean, some of them I'm probably blind to because of certain biases. But yeah, I'm not trying to say that Christianity or Christians, like, I mean, earlier I pointed to C.S. Lewis's argument about, like, people who are Christians are going to have problems. Even we're talking about the Bible. The Bible says what?
Yeah.
When I read the Bible, I mean, there are ways of just like looking at it and kind of being able to sort of dismiss this as outrageous nonsense. But when I don't do that, it keeps on giving back. These stories keep on causing me to look deeper into myself and to care more deeply about the people around me. And I'm not trying. I mean, you want to point to some specific stories and try to say, how do those stories do that? Well, we could talk about that, but we'd need a whole hour to talk probably about any one of them. But usually whenever we've done this, you kind of point to a couple different stories and say, well, what about this and this and this and this? But I think if we want to really do this with a story sometime, we should take some time on it, because it's not as simple as, I mean, it's not simply the definition, like it's the experience of processing the story and thinking about where is this direction headed? I mean, where is this story going?
Where does the story end?
Where does it push nurture? Sorry?
Where does the story end? That's exactly it. It's all heading towards an end. And we're still waiting for it. Well, I don't know why we're waiting. I don't know why Yahweh allows Satan to run rampant and all that shenanigans. But the end goal, the end result for Yahweh, for the Bible, for the Christian religion is separation of non-believers and believers. It's all about separation. There's no harmony there. You're going to burn in hell forever, or separation of Jesus, or whatever you want to, refer to it as. But that's still separation. It's still division. That's not kumbaya. That's not all. Let's work together in harmony. There's no harmony in that.
Yeah, I was going to say I totally agree, but I'm thinking about the beginning of the Silmarillion. Have you ever read any of that? It's like kind of the like there's the Lord of the Rings, and then there's before the Lord of the Rings, there's the Hobbit, and then there's like the whole mythology of like, you know, ages, thousands. I don't even know. Maybe it's millions of years. I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read the beginning anyways, which is sort of like Tolkien's Genesis story.
Oh wow!
And he tells this really cool story of like, okay, there's oh god, I think I have it right here. I always forget this guy's name. Tolkien's and maybe that's the point, is that you're not supposed to remember the name of God because you can't say the name of God. But Tolkien's name for God is it starts with an A. I just gotta find it. It's oh geez, there's so much beginning stuff here.
That sounds interesting. I'll
Okay,
check that out.
Eru, Ardu, Iluvatar. That's who I'm looking for. Okay, so Iluvatar, he creates the world, but he creates it through singing. So there's a deep musical metaphor here throughout his whole creation narrative.
Interesting.
Like he builds this song of existence.
Huh.
And there's Melkor, who's kind of frustrated about free will or something like that. I have to kind of read it again, but he's like, you know, I don't want to be harmonious with everything. That feels too much like I'm having to like. That feels too much like communism. Okay, I want to be a little bit more of a libertarian here. I want to break off and be my own bear. And Melkor begins. It says in this that Melkor begins to play dissonant music. He's trying to like to break off from the ultimate harmony of Iluvatar's design. And Iluvatar's like, okay, I mean, you shouldn't be doing that, but he's such a good composer that he takes the dissonant music that Melkor plays and weaves his melodies around it. And figures out some way for even the sort of intentionally bad sounding music. He's such a good designer that he wants to like try to weave it back in. And so it's this sort of cosmic yes and, which you know what I'm talking about when I say a yes and. It's like the fundamental rule of improv is that you never say no. Like somebody says something and then you always say yes and this, right? That's like if you want to do funny improv, if you want to even just have a good conversation with somebody, this is one of the rules. It's really useful anyways. It's like you always want to build off of whatever the other person's saying. And I think this rule can be found at the heart of, I mean, Tolkien wasn't directly writing a Christian universe at first. Later on, he kind of came to terms more with his Catholicism and became, you know, he was more willing to weave that stuff in there directly. But I think this concept is deeply at the heart of Christianity too, where it's like, there's a yes and. I just recently read through Matthew 5 again the other day, and I was just reading Christ's kind of central sermon, the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes and all that, and it lands on a lot of this stuff where it's like, okay, he looks at people's, you know, values, and he never says, "No, you haven't got it right." Oh, he says that, but he always says it through a yes and. He always says, "Yeah, you're actually right that that's wrong," and so here actually. The way we should be living is a lot higher than even you're saying, right? And I was talking with my friends about this recently. It's like applying this to a lot of kind of current ideologies, where it's like, you know, I'm frustrated with. Well, maybe let's point it right. I'll point the gun right back at my own self and my own people, right? I look at fundamentalist Christianity. I look at a lot of Protestantism, at evangelicalism, and I see, look at all these problems, and. I say, look at the problems for one thing that you guys are pointing to. You know, you're frustrated that people don't value this conversation about babies still in the womb, whether or not they're babies or not. That ends up being a very philosophical conversation, but you're very concerned about that. And if you're right, that seems like a valid concern. And it's like, okay, yes, but also there are, you know, young women's lives at stake here, and there are, you know, sometimes in some cases where it's deeply damaging to their lives, and it's like, what's the right thing to do here is not so obvious. It's like, yes, your concern is valid, but there's also more things to be concerned about. It's not that your concern isn't valid. It's that, yes, and there's also women at stake here, so we have to take everything into account. And it's like, to me, that's what Christianity, that's what it's been, lately anyways, has been pointing me towards, is a figuring out a way to sort of weave or learn how to weave harmoniously even sort of dissonant ideologies back into the melody of existence, or
Wow.
the orchestra of existence. I don't know if that's very
That's pretty, that's like
abstract kinda
reading a
talk.
lot into it. That's quite an interpretation for sure. But in the
Well,
end, though, it's
I don't
still
think
about
that's
that
reading that much into
separation,
it.
though.
As far as Christ's message, I mean, he literally is just pointing at the people who are even in the Gospels, pointed at as like the assholes, and he says, "Yeah, you guys are actually right, but here and more."
Yeah,
There's
I'm
more.
gonna show you how much of an asshole I can be. Watch what happens at the end of the story. You know that.
Wait. Show you how much of an asshole I can be?
Oh, Jesus, showing you. You think I'm an asshole now because of all the stuff I've done in the
I'm
past?
saying he was pointing at the people who we all knew were assholes, like the Pharisees.
Right, and I'm calling Jesus the asshole because of all the stuff he's done in the past. Not just the Pharisees. Pharisees believe some crazy things for sure, but Jesus is the one who's supposed to be Yahweh, who's torturing, killed kids and punishing them out of jealousy and no other gods before me, or I'll kill your kids, I'll make you eat them, I'll slaughter them, I'll starve them, drown them. I don't see that as any of that. Anyways, that's off the point. That's off topic. We're down another wormhole, but I just want to end it here with the whole end of the world, essentially the whole end of Yahweh's drama here. I call it a pointless drama because there's really no point in playing it out this long. I don't understand why he's doing it. Doesn't make any sense to me, but I'm not God. I'm not perfect. And I don't know. Anyways, so at the end of it, it's all about separation. Do you believe that? Yes or no?
I believe that ultimately God's plan is to like separate people and have them burn in hell forever.
No, not the burn in hell, because I know you don't believe that. I know you're just the separation part of it. You're separated from God. You're not going to be with him, be around him, right?
I mean,
I remember correctly.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that the Christian tradition is super clear on exactly how that's supposed to play out. I mean, I think I'm going to give two answers because I want to see if I can kind of say the abstract, like whatever, like what Christians believe, and then I'll give you maybe my own more personal.
Definitely want what you believe. That's why we're here. 100%.
But I mean, but this is the way I have to do theology a lot of times, is because I don't have obviously enough time to like deeply think through every facet of the entire worldview of Christianity. That would be ridiculous to expect anybody to do. Like,
well, I mean, if you're going to accept something, typically you want to work through it to the fullest.
I would say that would be extremely atypically. I mean, to the extent that you can, sure. I think that's a good qualifier.
Yeah.
But it's just that if you recognize that, like, Christianity is a pattern, is a frame that's supposed to help you understand the entirety of existence. So it's impossible to, and I'm not pretending anybody's ever done that or ever will, or even that the experiment will ever play itself out to the point where you could totally test it.
Yeah.
Right. There's increasing levels of certainty. We touched on that earlier.
A little bit. Yeah.
But it's really important for me, though, when I'm like thinking about theology, to have two categories where I have like my personal intuition about something and like the personal sort of research, personal little experiments I'm running, personal little thought, like logically trying to dig around in a question. And then there's like the general, okay, I appeal to my community that they've done some groundwork here before. I haven't had a chance to deeply engage with the whole history of this conversation, but this seems to be where my community has landed. That's really important for me to have both of those, because again, it's impossible for me to have 1,000 years worth of conversation on every piece of theology, but that's what's happened in the tradition of Christianity.
Gotcha.
Right? So to the extent that I understand kind of where we're at in the Christian community, I don't think there's a solid consensus about whether or not people stay in hell forever, or whether their consciousness stops existing. But yes, you talk about separation. I think that would have to do with hell, and I don't think it's separation just from God. It would just be separation from everything. And it's, again, looking at it through Lewis's lens, it's not a sort of forced separation. It's like an escaping from everybody, because you just don't have the patience for everybody else. It's like this weed of sin grows in you to the point where you just don't like anybody or anything, and you just want to be away from everybody.
Interesting.
That's so even within, I mean, the Great Divorce, that's the book I'm talking about. That's Lewis's book about heaven and hell. It's really interesting. It seems that his intuition, I mean, it's kind of a vague ending that like there is some kind of sort of later final judgment coming, that eventually there's going to be no return. But again, it's really murky. So as far as my own personal intuition about that, when I think about what Christianity has sort of led me towards so far, and the way that I'm learning to process the world through a Christian lens, it doesn't seem consistent with the rest of the pattern that I'm seeing, that God would kind of ultimately say, okay, this is the good stuff and everything else is actually forever evil, and I just want to kind of separate it, and we're never going to touch any of that stuff again.
Mm-hmm.
That seems kind of like an ideological view of God. That seems kind of like a view of God that creates an Eden that doesn't have a snake in it.
There's a good idea.
Right? Well, I don't think that is a good idea.
Oh, okay.
I think that what I'm even seeing in that story of the Garden of Eden is that God is somebody or something or some story, some way of being that cares about the evil stuff enough to not totally destroy it, but to try to keep on engaging with it and keep on trying to incorporate it back into himself.
That's a lot there. That's a lot. That's a whole nother wormhole for sure. We can get into that next another time. But I'm trying to wrap it up here just at the end.
Okay, sorry.
You're fine. You're fine. We're talking about harmony, and at the end it's going to be separation. So how is that correlate? The harmony that turns into separation?
I mean, on a really simple level, it's just like there's things that I can't harmonize. I mean, if I'm kind of want to personally apply it, it's like there's people that I can't get along with yet.
So there's
I'd like to be able to get along with them someday,
yeah.
But for now, I have to separate them from me. It's like this toxic, cut out toxic friends. That kind of motif,
for sure.
Right? It's like if you can't be around somebody, if you're not able to incorporate them into your life, you have to kind of push them off and say, okay, maybe someday I'll be ready for this, but right now I'm not.
So Yahweh, he can't stand me. Let's just use me as an example. He can't stand me, so he's going to push me away. That's not harmonizing with me. He's not working with me. He's not talking with me. He's not, hey, dude, let's work this through. You have an issue with me? What's your issues? Let's hash it out. Oh, my issue is that this, and this. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, that's a misinterpretation. Let's talk about this. And that would be a more loving, compassionate being, as opposed to just, I can't deal with you. Get out of here. You're done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I'm talking about that. That's the one side of the separation thing. So like, if I can't handle somebody, I'm not able to incorporate themselves. So I'm saying that's, to one extent, I think God has sort of compassion on each individual in each community that has to do that, because there's a sort of pragmatic, okay, you're just not ready for that. And that's an important part of humility. It's like, I don't have enough character in order to know how to interact with certain people in a loving way. I hope I can get there. I'm still growing. Yeah. But then there's the other, it's like, okay, I deeply like, okay, I don't want to get specific here, but there are people that I've interacted with before that I would be happy to incorporate into my life. I would be happy to be friends with them, and I would consistently reach out to them and say, let's have a campfire together. Let's have a talk. Let's even talk about the problems you have with me. And if they're not down for that, is it more loving for me to reach out and grab them by the neck and say, no, we're gonna be friends? Or I don't know. It's like, the way you respond in that situation is a mystery. And so I would say that the way God responds in that situation is mysterious. I think God does whatever the best thing is, but I don't think it's very specific. Again, within Christianity, we don't say very clearly usually what we think God will do in any situation. And if we do, we usually try to say that. I think we usually should try to do that with a grain of salt, because you're probably wrong.
Well, we'll end it here, but it would just be great if you showed up, if you just said hello, called me once in a while, text me, say, hey, let's go hang out. Let's hash out some issues. That would be a great start. But yeah, I've still failed.
I'm here right now, Mike.
I appreciate that, Garrett, man. Well, why don't you tell everybody where we can reach you?
Yeah, if you want to hear more of my insane blathering, you could go find my project called This Could Be Interesting on YouTube, on Spotify, Audible, iTunes, anywhere good or bad podcasts are sold, you can find it.
Also a great musician. Don't forget to plug that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I do make some music as well. So you can find, I just put out a cover EP last year called Run for Cover. And I also have, some kind of meditational or relaxing music that I've put out 2 tracks from this album already, and hopefully the rest of it should be out by the end of the year, but don't hold your breath. I've kind of half sitting on this album for the past 2 years. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Garrett, man. Thanks for coming back 3 times. This is a 3-timer right now. I'll contact you for the next one.
Okay.
All right, man. Take care. Talk to you later. That's all the show there is for you today. Thanks for listening. The Bible Says What has a new Firebrand level patron, Kevin Mcdonnell. Thank you, Kevin, for supporting the blasphemy. Also, a special shout out to Freethinker 215. Thanks for the beer. If you like what you heard and want to help keep the recording light on, simply go to patreon.com/BSW the podcast and sign up to be a supporter of the show. Your episodic tithes of $1 or more will give you access to the patron feed, unaired conversations, early access to each episode, and much more. For the latest events, BSW swag, and a peek behind the scenes, head on over to the show's ever-evolving webpage at thebiblesayswhat.com. The Bible Says What the book is out. Head on over to thebiblesayswhat.com and get yourself and your grandma a signed copy. Thanks to the cosmic powers of the internet, it is now possible to buy me a beer or coffee online. Simply go to buymeacoffee.com/BSW the podcast and click the appropriate buttons. If you can't support the show monetarily, please like, share, and or leave a review. As always, you can find me at the Bible Says What Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Instagram pages. You can also reach me at bswthepodcast@gmail.com. And no matter which platform you use to listen to your podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on the next episode. Until then, would you kindly pick up your Bibles and read them? To believe in only brought more doubt and eventual freedom from the religious indoctrination that held my mind prisoner. No, that held me prisoner in my own mind. One more time. Here we go.